I really had thought that there were certain things that this fandom was beyond, and one of those was ridiculous level nitpicks of what was already established to have been a really good series. And then I found out that no, we are so very much not above that. In fact, we've decided to bring that back, all because things aren't going the way we wanted them to in the current ongoing series. Other times, just because we think that the series needed to work a certain way, that good writing has to be a certain way. And I'm actually here to say no, it doesn't. Because when you restrict writing to having to follow certain guidelines, then you restrict creativity, and certain writers do not work within certain parameters. And I'm saying this in direct reference to certain people who use certain criticisms against Dragon Ball, including the Dragon Ball manga by Akira Toriyama, in which they say things along the lines of, well, Toriyama introduces this story point and then either completely forgets about it or just does nothing with it, and that's bad writing. Because what he winds up doing is the exact opposite of that. Or, Toriyama should have done this, that, or this. Or, this character is completely unnecessary to the series even going on, and having them in there is a complete waste of time and bad writing. And none of these are objectively true. You may not like it, you may have preferred it if it went a certain way, but it is not objectively bad writing. And what I mean by that is, I have seen people say, just to cite a non-specific example here, that during the whole Frieza saga, the Frieza arc, that Goku actually somehow regaining his composure and opting not to kill Frieza, opting to spare him, even if it is primarily for the purpose of forcing him to live with his humiliation. It isn't pure mercy. He wants him to live knowing that someone who couldn't, or who he thought couldn't beat him, someone he thought was so low, not only completely and utterly outclassed him, but actually pitied him enough to allow him to live. He didn't even give him, well, it's not even pity, he didn't even give him the honor of dying in battle. He was going to make him live the rest of his days forever knowing that a creature that he deemed to be so inferior as to be sub-sentient almost, a species that he thought he had completely crushed, one of the last members of it came back and just so completely outclassed him so as to become bored by the fight. Alright? But there are people who say that because the Super Saiyan was teased as being this cold, ruthless, merciless killing machine, that somehow it never should have not been that. That Goku maintaining his composure, regaining it, and opting to calm down and to not kill Frieza there is somehow Toriyama either having put something in there that he forgot about and it's a plot hole, or just something that he introduced for absolutely no reason and therefore was completely unnecessary and in itself bad writing. Neither of these things are the case, and here's why. Toriyama does do a lot of very subversive writing. And I know a lot of people like to abuse that term, oh, this is so subversive, this is... No. What I mean by that is that what Toriyama wrote at the time that he wrote it, okay, and that's the key, at the time he wrote it, alright? I know like 1,001 other series have done this formula afterwards, and some people want to argue they did it better. That's neither here nor there. Not at all. Okay? At the time, what Toriyama did was very subversive, and here's why. For one thing, he took a martial arts series, a series heavily focused on that, turned it into a hybrid comedy, and that's something that remained throughout, and the fact that people forget that is also hilarious. But he subverted a lot of tropes. And what I mean by that is Goku being the main character is not a heroic figure. He's really not. Not in the traditional sense. He doesn't go around, looking to right wrongs while hunting down this one particular person that he wants revenge on. He doesn't, he's not your goofy hero type either. He's not even necessarily super altruistic. I mean, the people that he winds up helping Yeah, he helps because he doesn't like to see innocent people or creatures, suffer. But at the same time, he doesn't go around looking for anyone who might be hurting these innocent creatures or people. There are people that he literally encountered along the way of accomplishing his own goal. That was something that at the time was not super common. Nowadays, it's not at all uncommon. In fact, one of the more popular incarnations of this particular trope now, which that series really helped jumpstart big time, is probably Luffy. And I know that offends a lot of people. They don't like to accept that Goku is similar to Luffy in any respect because, for whatever reason, I can't respect Luffy because he's, this, that, or the other. That's okay. But that doesn't change the fact that Goku is similar to him in several ways. I'm not going to say he's a carbon copy because he's not. But, especially since, he came first. But, Luffy's not a carbon copy of Goku. That's neither here nor there, though. Bulma, at the time, she was the female lead, and she not only never became the love interest for the main character in any way, shape, or form, but she certainly wasn't the sweet-hearted or innocent or whatever type of character that typically the leading lady was. There'd typically be your leading lady, who was that, and then you'd have, secondary female characters who were more either risque or goofy or selfish or what have you. That's a common trope to this day, but... No, Bulma, despite being arguably the leading lady of the series, in fact, not arguably, she was, very selfish, very conniving, very self-centered. Her entire goal looking for the Dragon Balls was basically to find a perfect boyfriend, and by perfect boyfriend, she basically meant someone who would worship her and wait on her hand and foot. Yeah, it's... she was not your typical leading lady at the time. Piccolo was made out of pure negative energy. He was literally all the darkness inside Kami that was expelled, and he became his own physical being. By rights, you could argue that person is made of evil, therefore, they can't possibly ever be good, right? But that happens. And it happens through a rather unconventional means. Too. Goku's son befriending him. Someone finally just saying, hey, I don't think you're as bad as people think you are. My dad told me he didn't think so either, and it looks like he was right. And it's like, Piccolo learned when Gohan told him that not only did he have a friend in this kid, this kid wasn't terrified of him, didn't see him as a monster, but even the man that he had been bred to hate from day one, even that guy didn't think he was all bad. Even that guy couldn't see him as a complete and total monster. And it really challenged a lot of what he thought, and it started to spark a change in him. And that's just stuff back in Dragon Ball and early Dragon Ball Z. This is the alleged problem-free area, and yet this happened there. So when Goku, does gain control of himself, being a Super Saiyan, even though the legends all said, cold-hearted, perfect warrior, and Frieza soldiers said cold-hearted, perfect warrior, and Vegeta said cold-hearted, perfect warrior, that's the entire point. That's subverting that. One of the themes that's constant in Dragon Ball is that nothing is inherently set in stone. You control your own path. Piccolo, despite being literally made of the negative and in the evil feelings and thoughts and desires in Kami, chose to abandon that whole Demon King thing for the good of everyone. And even refuse with Kami, someone he couldn't stand, because it had to be done. Vegeta, look at Vegeta's entire character arc, In fact, heck, look at everything Vegeta had said throughout the series. Even when he first showed up, I am a super elite warrior. You were born of the lowest class. You're trash. Nothing you could ever do could ever put you on a level where you could even touch me. Vegeta stated that time and time again, and look what happened. It was subverted. Toriyama does subvert a lot. You know, I'm not saying that it's inerrant, in everything he does, but it happens. So when it happens here, why all of a sudden is it bad when in all those other cases where it happened, people seem to completely accept it? That's the kind of thing I don't get. See, it's like everything that's ever brought up in a series, people try to put Toriyama in the same box as, say, Oda or Araki or Togashi, where X, Y, and Z is put in the page, therefore X, Y, and Z has to happen a certain way, or it has to be handled the way this author would have done it, or this author. And it's nice that you think they're great authors. It's nice that you think they're your favorite authors. They may well be. You may love their writing style. But Toriyama's not them. Toriyama has his own style. When you try to force him into the box that those three are in, and all three of them, by the way, are very different from each other. That'd be like saying that you expect Togashi to write exactly like Oda. That'd be saying like you expect Oda to write like Araki, etc. You wouldn't do that there, but for some reason people do this with Toriyama a lot lately. And it does get kind of ridiculous. But that, believe it or not, that lovely little 10-minute bunny trail was just kind of an introduction to what I'm going to talk about this time around. And that's that we really need to have a few more discussions. I think I've been gone a little too long. Because, holy crap, some of the stuff that I'm seeing resurface in this fandom is stuff that I dealt with back in 2010. Okay? 2010, 2009, all the way back then. In that we have people falling into the same mistaken beliefs about characters, about character personalities, about the way they're handled in the series, and I feel like that needs addressed. One thing I want to talk about in particular, because I've been seeing certain proponents of a certain character really trying to push this idea, is this bizarre idea that Akira Toriyama will play heavy favorites with select characters, that no matter what he says about which characters are his favorites, his real favorites are clearly X, Y, and Z. And the real reason that his real favorites are characters X, Y, and Z is because they're always put above this character who I like. This character here is stronger than the character I like. This character here gets more screen time than this character I like. Ergo, he has to love this character more than the character I like. And this is simply not the case. And one reason that I do want to point that out is Vegeta. Toriyama does not particularly like Vegeta. And while Vegeta fanboys have this complex over it, no, he doesn't hate him near as much as you guys want to pretend he does. But he's not particularly fond of him. He does, however, see his use as a narrative tool. He does, however, see that he does have appeal, so he tries to keep him around more. And he also serves as a foil and a rival to Goku. But there are other characters that Toriyama likes more. One of his favorites, besides Goku, at least to draw, is Piccolo. He loves Piccolo. He finds Piccolo's design very fun to draw, and he enjoyed putting him on the page. If Toriyama was playing favorites, frankly, Piccolo would be in the series a lot more than Vegeta. He'd have found a way to keep him useful a lot more than Vegeta. Same thing with Krillin. People say that Toriyama plays favorites with Krillin. If that were the case, why is he not in it more than other characters that Toriyama doesn't really seem to have a stance on or even like? Do you see what I'm saying here? In particular, though, this is a common belief held by, once again, the Tien fanboys. And one in particular, I do not remember the gentleman's name, and I would not say it even if I did, because I don't want to spark drama. I do not want to single anyone out. I don't want to send anyone after them. But they did do a video. And in this video, they addressed this notion that they had that Akira Toriyama not only hates Tien, but that the sole reason that Krillin is stated to be stronger than Tien, even though it's quote-unquote never shown, and quote-unquote shown to be impossible within the series, he plays favorites with Krillin. He doesn't like Tien, and therefore, Krillin is stronger than Tien, which is complete bullcrap according to this guy. And it's an argument that I see a lot, and it's that this notion that Tien trained nonstop, 24/7. It's all he ever did. He poured his entire life into nonstop training, and therefore there's no way Krillin, who didn't do that, and who they believe took a complete break and even quit altogether for over a decade, would ever be stronger than him. Now I'm gonna touch on this a bit and address this in a way that well, let's face it, I can't be tactful about this, because are y'all stupid? Are y'all stupid? Genuine question, because I wanted to just believe that this is something that I can attribute to misinterpreting things in the anime or the manga. But when you try to cite the anime and the manga, both, even though you know they're contradictory, in order to back up your point, just for the sake of backing up your point, I really have to wonder if y'all are being dumb, intentionally obtuse. And when you oh god, when you sit there and say that it's because Toriyama hates Chinese people and Tien is Chinese because he's named after a Chinese dish and wears Chinese clothes, y'all are being real dumb. Okay? And I wish that this was a joke. And maybe even the guy who started this, the guy who did the video, maybe he was joking with that. I can't say for sure. Part of me thinks he might have been, but I know a lot of people who have watched that video are taking it seriously and actually spreading it. I'm seeing in YouTube comments, I'm seeing it in Facebook comments, I'm seeing it on Tumblr, I'm seeing it on Twitter. This notion that he coined the phrase, I don't know if he coined it, but he's certainly popularized it as of late, which he calls the, and I quote, Toriyama hand job, in which Toriyama will essentially fluff up characters that he prefers, regardless of any sort of in-series logic. And the reason that he says that Krillin is particularly a case of this is because there is absolutely nothing to ever indicate that Krillin got stronger because, and here's where the logic begins to get silly, Tien started stronger. Tien kept training. Ergo, Tien has to stay stronger. That's not how it works. Alright, now let's ignore the fact for a moment that you're taking a lot of stuff from the anime that wasn't present in the manga. A lot of characters can keep training. Vegeta, for example, has thrown himself into training. That has not helped him surpass Goku unless Goku goes through a particularly long period of not being able to train. And even then, once he starts training again, he can catch up to and surpass Vegeta pretty easily. Something that even Vegeta recognizes. So this notion that eternal training will inherently make you stronger no matter what doesn't necessarily apply. There's also the little problem of, even if Tien was training 24/7 nonstop, he would run into the same problem that Vegeta inevitably runs into, which Whis pointed out to Vegeta, in that he constantly pushes himself and he never relaxes. And it pushes his body way too hard. It winds up being harmed by the strain of it. It cuts into his gains. It's something that Goku pointed out to Gohan when they got out of the time chamber. Why? Why would he do that once they're out of the Rosai? Why would he not go back in? Why? Because he said that we just put our bodies through 1 year of nonstop rigorous training. We are going to rest. We are going to relax, let our bodies heal, and then we will warm up, get fresh, and try to get some more reps in after that before this match that's coming up. When you train nonstop 24/7, you don't do that. You constantly keep your body under duress and strain. Even bodybuilders will tell you got to have some rest days. Professional athletes and mixed martial artists, they will all tell you that you need to rest and recoup. You can't constantly be in that gym pushing yourself. It's why in those sports games, when you do like the career modes, kind of a weird example, I know, but you have a fatigue meter, and once your fatigue gets too low, you run a higher risk of injuring your player, your athlete, by pushing them through training with high fatigue levels. It's the same thing there. So even assuming that that was the case, that wouldn't have quite the gains that you wanted to have. But as we all know, that's not the case because Tien is not training 24/7. Tien works a farm. Tien rents out his services due to his multiform technique as a farmhand on multiple farms to make extra money. Chaozu also helps people out on their farms. He can use his telekinesis. And what happened? They used the money that they had earned and they open up a dojo, which we see. That is what Tien is doing with his time. Not constant, non-stop training 24/7. It has never been that way anywhere but in the anime where he was depicted doing that. Furthermore, let's get into some other things that the anime gives him that the manga doesn't, and that's feats. Now, aside from people wanting to cite a non-canon film like BoJack Unbound, just because they want to argue it can fit in canon does not make it canon, mind you. Where Tien somehow inexplicably pushed Trunks to go Super Saiyan during their tournament fight. That is not indicative of Tien's actual power. I'm sorry. It's just not. It's a movie. I mean, I don't need to say any more than that. It's a movie. But even if we're going within the anime itself, Tien pinning Cell is often brought up. Tien pinning Cell is not quite as impressive as the anime makes it out to be. Not in the manga. What I mean by that is, in the anime, when Cell is being pinned, they make it seem like it's more than pinning him. They make it seem like it's hurting him. He is shrieking and roaring in strain and even in pain. This is supposedly hurting him. And it goes on for a good long time because, you know, we gotta pad this out. It's the anime. And we're talking about a series that once did an entire 30-minute episode on 8 panels from the manga. But in the manga itself, it only lasts like a page and a half. It lasts barely long enough for 18 and 16 to get over the horizon. That's it. It is not a very long thing at all. And when Cell gets back up, he is not hurt. He is not strained. He is just a little bit dirty. In fact, comically, I know it wasn't intentional, but it does almost seem comedic. When Tien hits the ground, Cell actually pops right back up immediately after. And looks around the horizon and they're gone. He wasn't even distracted from what he was trying to do. In fact, him trying to deal with Tien, that was an afterthought. And it was because he made him lose his target. It's not because, hey, you hurt me. It's because you made me lose my target. Another thing the anime gives him that's not in the manga is when they're fighting the Cell Juniors, Tien actually manages to rescue not only Yamcha, but Goku from the Cell Juniors. Now, keep in mind, these things are about as strong as Vegeta was when he was Super Saiyan Grade 2. Okay? That is incredibly strong. That there is basically the anime trying to imply that Tien, while perhaps not on that level, is strong enough to at least get in some solid, painful hits on a Super Saiyan on that level. That would require him to be far stronger than even Piccolo was at the time, and Piccolo was stated to, until Vegeta exited the Rosat, be the strongest character, period. He had the highest level of power. And somehow Tien didn't and just decided to watch the entire time. Cell was still in his first form when, if he was at that level, he could have easily obliterated him. or at least fairly easily? No. I mean, in the manga, being perfectly blunt, Tien's only seen like twice. Once getting punched in the stomach by Cell Jr., and one other time getting flung against the wall. And that's not a knock on him, because literally everyone who wasn't Goku, or even Goku was getting roughed up, but anyone who wasn't, Goku, Vegeta, Trunks, even Piccolo was struggling with those things a lot. It's not a case of, look at Tien, he's so weak, because everybody was getting knocked around by those things. It's just that, again, the anime gives him feats that the manga did not. And another one that I see often cited is this shot that he supposedly got in on Boo. He fired at Boo, and it supposedly somehow hurt Boo with Gotenks absorbed. And it didn't. I mean, aside from the fact that it never happened in the manga, and in the manga, the blast, what happens is he shows up, he dissolves the blast that Boo fired at Mr. Satan and Dende, which, by the way, is significantly smaller than his other beams. It's just a little finger beam. It's not like he put any kind of major effort into it. He dissolves it with his tri-beam, his literal wall, so surprise there. And then Boo immediately, upon being annoyed that he couldn't, kill them, decides, I'm just going to make a massive ball and see if anyone can block this. And Tien's like, oh crap, I can't do anything against that. Gohan figures he can't do anything against that, and that's when Goku shows up. But even in the anime, when he does get that shot in on Boo, first and foremost lets him. Second of all, even though Tien uses that tri-beam on Boo, does not phase him. He doesn't even I don't even think he blinks. So this weird idea that he somehow got in a hit on Boo and it hurt him, I have no idea where that even comes from. But simply put, even that aside, I would just like to explain why it is that it's actually completely feasible using in-series logic why Krillin surpassed Tien. Alright, I've mentioned before the concept of limitations where you're going to get diminishing returns, and at one point, no matter how hard you push yourself, you're only going to get X amount of strength. Roshi, for example, his strength came not necessarily in forcing himself to get far stronger, but yes, he did get stronger, but a lot of his training and his power up, so to speak, was in his stamina and his ability to maintain his max power a lot longer and dip into it more. Which actually is a very ingenious move, especially when you know that you're only getting diminishing returns. You find new ways to improve yourself and make yourself more viable. And that's where his experience came in, and that's where it came in handy. In the case of Tien, however, again, diminishing returns are a factor, but consider also just what we saw of Krillin and Tien and their respective appearances, the power gap they're in, and how we watched that shrink. Oh yeah, the belief that Tien was inherently super stronger than Krillin until DBZ, and then Krillin's just handed this power up that makes him stronger than Tien, not quite accurate, and here's what I mean by that. At the Budokai, where Tien was crowned the champion, Tien was at about the same level as Goku, which means that he could have beaten down Tambourine pretty easily, at full stamina, full strength. The same Tambourine who essentially one-shotted Krillin at that same tournament. Now, bear in mind, Tien is also, let's see here, 4 years older than them? I believe he's actually 5 years older is it 4 years older than Goku? Or 5? No, he's like the same age as Vegeta, so yeah, it's about 5. So about 4 years older than Krillin. So, I mean, he's an adult at this point, okay? He is an adult beating up on kids. Which, again, not a slight, it's a tournament they entered, yada, yada, etc. But of course he's going to have a head start there. But just consider that gap there, all right? And then consider What happens the next time they show up? Tien is definitely stronger, yes, but Goku's even stronger still. But when Krillin fights Piccolo at the 23rd Budokai, what happens? He is not only revealed to have taught himself how to fly by himself, taught himself how to fly on his own. No one was around to teach him that. That is a skill that very few people know. Tien sure didn't teach it to him. But no, in fact, Tien specifically comments that, hey, how would he learn that all by himself? He taught himself how to do that. You know what else he taught himself how to do? Steer, control, ki blasts after he fires them. Because what's he do? He shoots at Piccolo. Piccolo jumps up, and he immediately curves it up into the air, and it follows him. That, contrary to popular belief, is not a skill that he learned only in Dragon Ball Z. He knew that back then. A lot of people forget that. He used all kinds of tricks to be able to get in hits on Piccolo, who, by the way, started using his full power. And not only was he hitting this guy using his full power, but he was just bouncing right back and coming back for more. It wasn't until Piccolo managed to slam him down from a high height with full force, and he hit the freaking tournament ground so dang hard that it cracked the thing. It cracked the stadium floor. He assumed he had to be dead. What happens? He gets back up. Sure, he falls on his butt and he can't really stand anymore. He's got the wind knocked out of him. He's loopy and he knows he can't win. So he taps out. But the fact that he not only managed to get that much stronger in the exact same amount of time that Tien had, which is frankly a much greater amount of gains in the exact same period of time that Tien had. His gains significantly higher than what Tien had. But it actually was enough to make Piccolo doubt whether or not he'd be able to so easily subdue and conquer the world even if he beat Goku. Yeah, not a joke. Fighting Krillin at that point was enough to strike doubt into Piccolo. Alright? Now, consider post-Saiyan arrival. When you look at the stated power levels for Krillin and Tien, they're actually really friggin' close. They're not that big. That gap has closed even more. So, what I don't understand is, why is it so hard for people to believe that between having his potential that was dormant, potential that had been locked away from him, opened up to him, and Vegeta's comments that the entire time that they were fighting on Namek, he could feel, and I mean, Vegeta doesn't hand out compliments easily, especially to non-Saiyans, frankly. And the fact that even he said that Krillin's power, and that even Krillin didn't realize it, had been growing exponentially non-stop the entire time he was with them on Namek. Why is it so hard to believe that combat experience managed to make him stronger than Tien? And when you consider the fact that, again, Krillin was making better gains than Tien already, just from training. I mean, the gap went from like a 10-foot gap to suddenly a 5-foot gap to suddenly a 2-foot gap in the same amount of time that all of them had to be training. Why is it so hard to believe he surpassed it? Why would it hurt people to think that Krillin was actually stronger than Tien? Because it doesn't take away from anything Tien did. Not at all. He still went out there and he still held back Cell. That was heroic. He still showed up and he managed to save Mr. Satan and Dende's lives. That's heroic. Being weaker than someone else does not change that. Nor is it this bizarre preferential treatment where just out of the blue, this weak little nothing character that you guys seem to think he was suddenly catapulted to way above Tien. That didn't happen. He worked for it. It was progression. It was visible in series progression. Why is that so hard to believe? And that is something that happens in this series. Visible in series progression. But nobody is willing to accept that. Why? Why is Tien suddenly hated just because he got eliminated from the Tournament of Power? You know who got eliminated a lot sooner? Krillin, you know, the guy that you claim Toriyama likes to give his hand jobs to. Yeah, he went out first. And then he got crapped on by everybody. Including, oh God, you know what, I'm not even going to go further with that because that's just plain stupid. You want to have criticisms about how he went out? Okay, fine, whatever. Here's the thing. The plain, honest truth. All y'all saying he could have left one of his horns in there, and that wouldn't have counted as a ring out? Probably not, and here's why. Every single one of those is Tien. Not a shadow clone, it's literally him. One of him. Even if they did allow the one to stay in, they would make the ones that fell out stay out. So you would have a Tien with probably about 1/4 of his power. He'd be done either way. Period. There's no way, though, that they're going to allow anyone to just duplicate themselves and use duplicates, even weakened duplicates, to stay in the ring. Because then, no matter what you do, you could never really ring that person out, because so long as they can continue to make a duplicate, well, they're still in the ring, even if they're frail and fragile. So no, it was not bad writing to have him go out like that. I'm sorry, it just wasn't. But even if it was, it's certainly not indicative of hate. Especially since he went out taking down someone who is giving Vegeta trouble, Goku trouble, Piccolo all kinds of trouble. And he gave himself up for the sake of the team to take that person out. Y'all are mad because he wasn't selfish, thought of the team, took care of someone, and took the out because of it. No, that's not hate. You know what's more embarrassing? Having someone finally able to do something after you built them up and then knocking them out of the ring. Having someone who's been putting up quite a fight just decide, you know what? I'm getting too old and tired for this. Yeah, it's probably best if I drop out now before I get in the way. And those aren't even inherently embarrassing. It's just not the same level of cool that Tien's exit was. It just isn't. But y'all want to act like he's hated because he's not still in there. Why? Where does this come from? Where did these really, really bizarre and almost delusional fandom beliefs come from? Okay, now I'm going to give you that Dragon Ball is not a perfect series. It's not. It had problems. I've talked about those problems. I've said things that I would do differently. And you know what? A lot of them are actually being addressed in Super. Characterizations being touched on more. Character interactions outside fighting and story arcs is being touched on a lot more. And character dynamics and relationships are being explored more. Character psychology even is being explored more. But because they still make jokes, we don't like it. Because the animation isn't 100% gorgeous all the time, we don't like it. Because this didn't go down the way I think it should go down, we don't like it. I mean, I'm not even going to touch on the fact that the anime has been handling things similar to Toriyama's manga versus Toyotaro's manga adaptation, which somehow allegedly has Goku even more in character, even though I can point to I don't know how many places where he is so radically out of character by comparison. But oh no, it's the anime, you see, that forgot what Goku is. Even though it didn't. It's the anime that's writing these characters poorly. I'm even seeing people try to claim that exploring different aspects of these characters is giving them traits they never had before just so that they could write a story around it. No. These were there. They just expand on them. I mean, this is stuff that I've been pointing out about these characters for years. And I'm finally seeing it show up in this series. And what happens? Oh, well, they're giving them these traits they never had before just so they can write a story around it. It's disrespectful is what it is. Shut up. Just stop. This fandom, shocking as it is for me to say it, was doing better. They were recovering at one point. But now they have regressed to a level of stupid that's almost from 10 years ago. You know, I thought I was done. I wanted to give up. I thought, why bother? But you know what? I can't. I can't because right now, someone's got to talk sense. So I'm gonna. I am gonna. I will catch you all next time, where I'm going to be addressing you know what? I'll keep it a surprise, but let's just say it involves a certain female android. Peace, guys.